Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good day. For me, it's good morning because it's 1 a.m. Welcome, everyone, to our January monthly member meeting. I was reflecting on this the other day, and I thought we've had a year of having these meetings after all of you asked that we should have a catch up every month. And we've done that for a full year. And I'm just excited to see us entering this new year and having our first meeting today with all of you present. I know that it's difficult to have everyone present every other time because of the time zones, but I promise that I'll always be here to meet with you as we learn and grow together. We now have 124 member organizations in 58 countries. And as per usual, I'd like to encourage you all to please recommend and link us with organizations that do work on the ground that support colorectal cancer. And we'll have Wordly for all of those that need translation. You'll let us know, and Jen will help you. And to our agenda. We'll have our internal updates by Nicole. And our speaker this month is Barry Stein. I'm excited for this month's speaker because it's something different. And we'll have Andy introducing Barry. And then we'll have our open forum and any questions and challenges, our ideas and collaborations and new global trends that we'd like to share. And then I'll announce next month's speaker. And then we'll close, hopefully on time. I'll hand over to Nicole to do the internal updates now.
Thank you, Tumi. Happy New Year, everyone, to everyone who's joining us live and everyone who's watching the recording. Happy New Year. We're really excited for 2026 and what we can accomplish together. Just briefly going to give a few updates. First, going around the room here, before I talk about what's on the slides here, I do want to share some very exciting news for Global Colon Cancer Association and really for the community at large. We have a new team member that's joined us in January. Her name is Parvathy Krishnan. We met in the fall and have been discussing how we could collaborate. And I'm really excited that she's joined as a full-time program director. All of you members are going to get to know her very well. She has extensive experience in the rare disease space. Is going to be instrumental in working with all of us to ultimately develop a resolution with the World Health Organization for colorectal cancer. So I feel like this is a really significant chapter that we're just starting with Global Colon Cancer Association. So I think that she is off camera right now, but that will just lead to a little bit more suspense for when you all do meet her live, but she will probably be taking over my internal updates on these meetings. So welcome to Parvathy. Then moving around on the slide here in the orange hats is Jen, who you all know very well, and Tara, who many of you don't know, but she's behind a lot of the great graphics that we generate. At ASCO GI, we had a wonderful presence led by Jen and Tara at the booth, where we launched our Knowing is Worth the Wait campaign. We had a biomarker IQ test and had a lot of really nervous people that were kind of afraid to take the test. So we are kind of reevaluating how we position that for ASCO. Almost need like a privacy curtain so people can take the test in privacy and then decide if they want to share their results. But we do encourage you to check out the biomarker IQ test. It's not all that difficult, but it really is a great way to start conversations. Also, I have exciting news that the Blue Hat Bow Tie for Colorectal Cancer Awareness website will be live this Friday, so stay tuned. We'll be letting you know where you can log on and access the great materials for Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. And lastly, just wanted to recognize, you may recognize here, Andy was included in the 100 most influential CEOs in oncology in 2025 by OncoDaily, which was a great honor. And we were excited for him to receive the accolades. So with that, Tumi, do I turn it over to Andy now? Okay, I do think Andy is the perfect person to introduce Barry, but before I hand it over to Andy, I just want to say that Barry and I may do almost as many meetings together as I do with Andy. Barry and I both serve on the board of directors for From Testing to Targeted Treatments. And because of that, I feel like Barry and I have traveled the world together. And I believe we were in Spain when I first asked him if he would be interested in sharing his story. And the reason that I said I felt this was so powerful is because what Barry's accomplished is incredible. And it's all been in his lifetime, right? So he's not telling you the story about somebody's great grandfather that accomplished something over many, many generations. What Barry did is something that we can all achieve in our own countries. And I know he's had a lot of ups and downs in his journey here as a survivor, as a leader in the CRC space. But I just really wanted to thank you, Barry, for taking the time to share your story and inspiring all of us.
Well, that's a much better introduction than I was going to do, Barry. But so as everybody knows, I've been in this space now. I'm going into my 27th year, and I've known Barry the whole time. I don't remember exactly when we met, but I was early on in co-founding the Colon Cancer Alliance in the US, and Barry was founding the Colorectal, Cancer Canada. And I know we saw each other at every conference, and it was always pleasant and a good hello. And what are you working on? And what are you working on? And how many times I said to the team, well, let's see what Barry's doing, when we're developing a new program, see what he's doing up in Canada. And we still do it because, the quality of the work that's been put out, the personal skin in the game story that everybody's going to hear, the lifelong commitment. Barry and I, there's not many that have stayed this long from the beginning of the colon cancer movement in the late 90s to now. You could probably count on one hand, and Barry's one of those. So it's a lifelong dedication and commitment that has saved an unimaginable amount of lives in Canada. And as Nicole said, we see Barry worldwide. He's at every meeting and every Zoom, and he's really representing this community as a true champion. I don't have your bio. This is all from memory. So maybe, Barry, as you're telling your story, include your bio to tell us not only how you got here, but who you are and what you do day in and day out.
I'm so overwhelmed from everything that I've heard now about you. And I think that we'd like to have a poll as you catch your breath. Before you and I engage in conversation, we have a poll that we'd like our members to participate in. Jen, can you present the poll to our members, please? All right, thank you. And thank you guys for this powerful introduction. And I think I said in the beginning that I am quite excited for today's speaker, and because today we are doing things different. We're not going to have a presentation, but we will have a conversation with Barry centered around lived experience, leadership, and impact. Barry, I'm honored to have you here today. And as we get into our conversation, I think Nicole and Andy are too excited and they've just said so much about you. I'd like you to tell us what was the hardest part of your diagnosis process itself, whether it was getting the right tests, finding doctors, understanding what was happening, but really what was the hardest part?
I'd be pleased to do that. But first of all, thank you for having me here today. It's really a pleasure to be with you all. And congratulations, Andy, on that award, and both to you, Nicole, and your entire team on really some amazing work that you've done, particularly over the last couple of years where, I saw that map and it looks like just Greenland practically is waiting to have you find somebody there. No pun intended there. But, from a Canadian perspective, we're quite sensitive to that, and I see I'll be fact checked by Gail today as well. So great to see you, Gail, and wonderful and I look forward to meeting all of you who are online today and who will watch this on a recorded video in the future. I look forward to meeting with you as well. So. This is a long time ago, and I guess that's the important part of it, because when I tell my story, I do tell it from a patient perspective on providing hope. A lot of people who are diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, don't have that hope. And of course, every case is going to be different. And that I think that's a very important fact to remember. But when I was diagnosed in 1995, we didn't have any drugs. We had 5-FU, and that was it. We certainly didn't really think that we could do anything for stage 4 patients. I didn't even know what a stage 4 patient was, let alone what cancer was all about in 1995. But I did know I had to do something. And I'll start off by telling you what happened when I was first diagnosed. And I basically freaked out. As I was a lawyer practicing law, this was the furthest thing from my mind. And I thought I would go see the head of oncology at our hospital, and because mano mano, we're going to talk, and I could take it. I do litigation. I could do this. And he tells me that I had a 15% chance of surviving if and only if they could get it out of my liver. And wouldn't you know it, I just fainted on the floor right in front of him. That was, as I say, probably the weakest moment in my life. But when I did come up from there and I was surrounded by my late brother-in-law and my wife and the physicians who were hovering over me, practically sprinkling water on my face, saying, well, that may have been the weakest moment, but as I get up and I look back right now, that was probably the strongest moment that I can remember in all my life, because I decided I wasn't going to give up and I was going to do something about it, even though I had no idea what I was going to do. So I did try to have my liver, well, first it was a question of my colon surgery, and that I did do in Montreal rather rapidly. Something we wouldn't do today. Many of you know, if the disease has already gone to your liver or elsewhere, they start you on chemo or whatever therapy that you're going to be on, and then they resect the colon later. But in those days, it was just get it out, and that's what we did. And then hunted for this opportunity to do liver surgery at the time, which was pretty much not done at all. Today we see people who have multiple liver surgeries, and this is almost common. But at that time, it wasn't done. And so I did have to hunt down for a liver surgeon who would do it. But unfortunately, much like today's days, there were really problems in terms of getting OR time. And I kept on getting delayed and delayed until I was outside practically of the reasonable delay to be operated on my liver. I didn't know at that point that it actually had seeded, I would say, in my lungs as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't have even considered that. But I had done some investigation, and only because I was delayed 3 times in Montreal, I decided I would go down to New York Hospital, where I was operated on, and thinking it was going to be one surgery. And at that time, lo and behold, they actually had a PET scan there, and that wasn't something that was available, in Canada either. So I did that, and after the first surgery, they found something remaining, and I did implant something called a hepatic arterial infusion pump in my abdomen to give chemo directly to my liver at the time. But lo and behold, it on the PET scan, it showed up not once, but twice. And we had 4 liver surgeries in New York, which was completely unheard of at the time. But we did it, or they did it, and I slept all the way through it. I also then, when I had no evidence of disease, I decided with my then late, all my doctors are either have passed away or they're retired for the most part, which is kind of unusual, but it is, 30 years later. So lots of things happen in 30 years. I did go with my doctor, who's a surgeon in New York, the late John Daly, out to California, where for the better part of a year, I did a cancer vax treatment which was really a melanoma vaccine that we're trying for colon cancer. And but after going there every 2 weeks, what happened was it seemed that it had spread to my lungs, or at least it was showing in my lungs. The fun part about this is that I had the media in Canada following me in New York and out to California and doing television programs. The reason why is because I sued the Quebec government for reimbursement for these costs, which were extensive at the time, and because they weren't able to provide the care in Canada under our healthcare system. Well, to make a long story short, it did come back to my lungs at that time, and I came back to Montreal. I had to stop the vaccine treatment. I did 3 liver surgeries and removed a rib. My first experience at shared decision making with my surgeon here in Montreal, who was actually good stories about everything. Actually, about all my experiences, I have funny episodes divided up into what some might call Seinfeld type of episodes. But if I have a chance, I'll get into some of those stories as we get along further on. So we had 3 liver surgeries and then 1 week of treatment, and then that was the end of it. And I have not looked back ever since.
Wow, what a story, Barry. I'm picking up from your conversation that delays were part of the problem, which is part of the problem still where I am now. Delays still play a major role in cancer diagnosis, especially colorectal cancer, and the financial burden that cancer has on patients. It's funny that it's still the same to this day. How does your experience inform how your organization supports newly diagnosed patients?
So I mentioned that the media was coming along. I mentioned that I had to sue the government. I mentioned that I had to make my own advocacy, what we would call self-advocacy, in order to survive. And that's how I got into it. I had certain skill sets as a lawyer, and I had a team in our law firm that would help me for sure. But really, we had to find, when I say we, I mean my wife and my family, we had young children at the time. I had 3 children and they were all young, and I didn't think that I was going to see them grow up, but now we have 8 grandchildren. So they've all grown up. The oldest is now 44 or turning 44. So, it was really sort of very emotional period of time. And as we did that, people started to approach me because my story was in the news, and we incorporated the organization in 1999, but we started in 1998. And so, how did we start the organization? And for those of you who are just getting started, I mean, this was not an unusual thing. When a passionate patient wants to start something, we get it motivated, and people start to volunteer. So we weren't professional; we were volunteers working together with the help of some physicians to get it going. And then we reached the stage. Well, at that stage, I should say, our main focus was just on awareness, right? We look back and the things we do today, it's awareness is part of what we do for sure. But that was the only thing we did then. It was very important to let people start talking about the disease and feel a little bit more comfortable to know about their bowel habits and so forth. And this was, in today's world, we've kind of freely talk about it. At that time, it was really more or less taboo to talk about those types of things. And even when my doctor, a gastroenterologist, told me that I had cancer, he said, I think we have, we're suspect of cancer. Never actually came out and said cancer, you have cancer, So it was just a way of dealing with those things at that time. And so awareness was the first thing.
Yeah. It's funny because it's still taboo. Speaking about cancer is still taboo in Africa. So we are slowly but surely moving to the right direction. But what early advocacy mistakes did you make, as you speak to our members that are starting off on the ground? What are the early mistakes that you remember making in advocacy that taught you your biggest lessons?
Just to finish, it's awareness, education, support, and advocacy that we go on. So the support and the education help to build that foundation for your advocacy. When I would say the only mistake that I ever made in advocacy, that I felt I ever made in advocacy, and Gail's probably going to laugh at this one, but is by not acting and not acting fast enough. So I was never afraid to do something, and I still to this day, I'm not afraid to do something that may appear or may be wrong, because it's worse if you do nothing. And there's an expression that we used in our law firm all the time in the litigation department. We said, if you do nothing, nothing happens. So if you do something and you make a mistake, you can correct it, or you can go back on it, or you can apologize, or you could do whatever. But if you do nothing, unforgivable, you know.
Barry of
Yeah.
today, the Barry of today, though, just to be clear, he never hesitates to speak up, and he does a very good job both in Canada and internationally. He's a strong colleague. We've been colleagues for a couple of decades, and so really, shout out to Barry too.
Well, thanks, Gil, especially coming from you, one of Canada's
Thank you,
key
Jane.
advocates for sure. So that I won't. So it's not a mistake. You can't be afraid to make mistakes. Sure, there are things we could have done better. Sure, there are things I wish I would have called a different person or a different time or written a different letter, but nothing compared to not doing anything.
Yeah, yeah. As your journey moved into leadership and becoming the CEO and president of Colorectal Cancer Canada, what skills did you have to learn, to prepare for this role?
This is something I think about every day because we all think about succession in the work that we do. And my skill set, comes from my experience as a patient, having grown up and seen all the things that developed over a period of time when there was virtually nothing, and whether it be diagnostics or treatments or trials and so on. And the world has changed obviously dramatically, especially in the last few years. Um, uh, my question is, what skill sets will be needed in the future, as opposed to what skill sets I needed to do what I did and I'm doing now. And clearly, we can see the communication skills are hugely important today more than ever. The use of, we're already using, and this is a big discussion point that Nicole and I always have, the use of artificial intelligence in the work that we do. How do we deal with patients? How do we get the word out? Everything is evolving at I would say, the fastest rate that I've seen. And this is only, post, in the last couple of years. I was going to say post-COVID, but it's really just in the last year or two that we see this rapid, rapid evolution of the way things are happening. We're also seeing in a world where skill sets are needed to negotiate. In Canada, we do a lot of work in health technology assessment. Gail and I work closely in some of these areas, and we're working with 8 health technology assessment bodies, government regulatory, provincial bodies, from the patient all the way up to the health ministers. And so negotiation, speaking skills, all the skills actually. Here's a funny story. I was humiliated when I first started law school, and listening at the first day, and the professor said, "Turn to your right, and turn to your left. You may think you're going to be a lawyer, but the chances are you may learn what you learn here, but won't be a lawyer." And I was actually insulted. But in retrospect, all the skill sets that I learned, in not only in school, but in law school, but in practice, I really apply on a day-to-day basis in the work that we do. So does everybody have to be a lawyer to manage and to run a colorectal or patient association? Of course not. But those are skill sets that help me in the past. What are the skill sets that will help us going forward? I think communication will still be the most important thing. Organizational skills, transparency, honesty, the real basic things that we have to get through to. And I would say the most important thing is passion. Passion and the drive to get things done. When I look back and I think of all the different, people that worked with our organization over the years, those who had the passion really got the job done. Yeah, they can make mistakes and no problem. They asked the questions and so forth. Those without passion dropped out very early on. It was not meaningful to them, and they didn't do what I asked my employees to do every week during our team meeting. I asked them the following. I say, in the work that you do, how is it going to make a difference in the patients' lives or the system change? How are we going to move the needle on everything that we do? So our focus in our organization is about bringing about change.
I know we speak about patients a lot and patient inclusion, but what does meaningful patient inclusion actually look like? I mean, not tokenism. To you, what does it look like?
Well, what we try to do, and I have to say it's not always easy, is when we develop a program or when we think about a program, we have a committee of patients who we find either through our support groups or online. They approach us as volunteers to get their input when we create or co-create our programs. One program, not every program you can do that with, but one program that we do like that is we call it a community conference, and we do that once a year. And the patients themselves design the sessions that we're going to have either speakers at. So it's really not just inclusion, but it's designed by the patients that we work with. So that's one way of looking at it.
Okay, and with everything happening, and how do you, as a leader, avoid mission drift, or your organization? How does Colorectal Cancer Canada avoid mission drift?
How do we avoid what? I'm sorry?
Mission drift, finding
Oh,
yourself
mission drift.
drift.
It's not so I like okay, that's a really great question because there is a difference between mission drift and being dynamic. And what you have to do is look around and see what's happening around the world and see how to adjust what you're doing accordingly. I'll give you a good example. I don't believe in a number of years, and I never put that number on it for good reasons because I don't know the number, but we won't be treating by disease site. We will be treating by molecular profile. And that's why the work that Nicole and Andrew and your team is doing in terms of biomarkers is so important. Because when we take, for example, and we don't see this regularly yet, but let's take the mutation of HER2 MMRB mutation, for example. We see that in breast cancer. Well, there are a limited amount and some, patients in colon cancer who have that and who could respond to the drugs like trastuzumab and other drugs that would address that mutation. So are we treating colon cancer or are we treating the mutation, right? At this point, I think it's still disease site that we're looking at mostly, but I think that that's where we're going. So keep an eye on things of that nature. It could evolve. So when I say be dynamic, we have a focus on our program called Get Personal. Nicole and I and others work on FT3 from testing to targeted treatment. And we recognize that with the experts around the world, and we want patients to be aware of biomarker testing because it's evolving. And so our organization and the work that we do has to evolve around that type of issue on biomarker testing and precision medicines. So that's just one example. There's many, I would say it affects every single thing that we do. But that's a good example of the difference between mission drift and being dynamic. We still focus, we have three trajectories. Our first trajectory is solely colorectal, from bringing in screening programs based on fecal immunochemical testing, to awareness, dealing with patients and their caregivers as they're diagnosed, support, the education for them and healthcare professionals, and advocacy on their behalf in all different ways. But our second and third trajectories are focused on the clinical development of drugs and devices and how the patient groups, as part of I sit on the steering committee, for example, of the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative. How do we employ the patient groups like ourselves and yourselves into the ideation of a clinical trial, the development of the protocol, recruitment and retention of patients? How do we work together and develop patient preference studies so that we can bring the PROs and patient preferences back to our regulatory authorities and our health technology assessment agencies so that we not only have endpoints in trials that are meaningful to patients, but drugs that are reimbursed that meet those needs? So these are the types of evolutionary things that are outside colorectal, but include colorectal cancer. And likewise, in our third trajectory of health policy, or what I call the soup du jour, is things like what I do work on with Gail, meaningful change in some of these HT health technology assessment agencies, or other things that may sort of supersede the cancer scene and connect the dots in Canada and internationally. So mission drift, you should be conscious of it, but don't let it stop you from being dynamic.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And, being in this patient advocacy community, a sad reality is that we will lose colleagues, supporters, and volunteers that we've become close to. How does Colorectal Cancer Canada support the staff and the volunteers and the wider community when loss occurs?
So I always feel bad when we lose people, both because of the health reasons or just people move on, and that's natural. So the consistent thing, as we know, the only consistent thing is change, and you have to get used to that. How do we support our volunteers? Not well enough, I have to say, but we try to include them in everything that we do. So we do have national events. We have a Push for Your Tush event nationally. It's a run walk. You can bring your dogs and your animals and so forth across the country. We have some particular events. We do specific conferences where they're invited to come. One, again, above the colorectal is our National Clinical Trials Conference, which we work on to change the way clinical trials are done so that patients have greater and more availability to clinical trials in Canada, regardless of where they live, and to bring clinical research to clinical practice so that it reaches out through decentralized trials to the community in order to bring more people into those trials and remove those barriers to accessing these trials. Now I think that's a lot of aspiration in what I just said, because there are a lot of barriers to participating in trials across Canada, which is a very large country and divided by the various provinces. But that's where our aspirations at, and we keep a close eye on what's coming, not just what is. And we put together visionary roundtables, so we include them in that as well. So wherever we can include our volunteers and our patients, but equally our healthcare professionals where possible, and sometimes when they allow us, our government officials and agency officials as well. So that's how we do it.
Okay. Do you think that your lived experience influences the way you lead, especially in decision making and strategy?
Yeah. So the way I just spoke, I almost regret, but I know who I'm speaking to today. We have to speak completely different to an average person who calls up with a first diagnosis, hardly knows what cancer is quite emotional, and is hanging on to every word. And we have to be able to work at that level as much as at the ministerial level. And even the ministers aren't so well advised sometimes, but to the expert, I would say healthcare professional, equally today. This is something that I started before, and I said it was all about awareness at the beginning. If you asked me to speak the way I am speaking now, but what we're doing at the very beginning, I really wouldn't know what to say. And I certainly wouldn't even know how to vision what we're doing today. So you have to take it as it is. Very relevant words from Carney today in a different context. But you have to look at the world as it is today, from a perspective of a colorectal cancer patient, and go forward. There's no looking back. There really is no looking back. Things are evolving. There are certain constants, though. People are people. They have to understand They have the similar emotional, sensitivities. Their influencers may be different though today. In our initial studies on patient values and preferences that we did in health technology assessment with Princess Margaret in Toronto and University of Calgary, we found that patients were influenced by those around them, their family members and friends, in their decision making as to whether they would do treatment or not do treatment or what type of treatment and so forth. How are you influenced today? Is it Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, or is it your family? I mean, these are different influencers. And this is what I said, we have to be open to change and understanding these different changes as they come. But that's what makes it hard because we don't know what to expect. So transparency, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is very important. And when I do tell my story, I start off by saying I knew nothing. I still don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And we have to look at it from a real open perspective about what is to come, what can we do, and provide people with hope. Because I would say very often we'll see physicians who will be extremely honest with their patients and remove all possible hope. And I could tell you that when I told you how I fainted at the beginning, when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, that's all it was. A person diagnosed with stall cancer. It wasn't me and my cancer or what I was going to do about it. It was a statistic. And we have to realize that this is a very individualized sport, and we can today more and more have greater success while realizing that every person is different and we're not going to win every single case.
Yeah. As we wrap up our conversation, because I want to give people a chance, because I'm sure everyone wants to interact with you. In a few sentences, how would you, what advice would you give to someone in our community, our member communities, our members in the community that are starting up, that are thinking they want to do this, but this is so difficult, that are looking up to us as GCCA for advice and support? What advice can you give them? How to start, where to start?
So, of course, every organization is at a different stage. Some are one person just starting it, and some have an organization built and a couple of staff, or they're just volunteers. So every organization is different. So it's not necessarily one piece of advice that we could give. I like the Nike tagline, just do it. I think that's really an important thing. Just do it, because you're going to find out that as you do it, and all of you, I would say probably everybody on the call today and who's seeing this, otherwise you wouldn't be here today, has had the experience that when they start to do something, they find that other people say, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll join in with you, or I'll help you. But it's so important to ask, for help, because you will get it. You will get it. And that's how you grow. And as I said, you're going to make mistakes. That's part of it. Because if you don't make mistakes, you'll never learn, but don't be afraid and just do it.
Okay. Oh, that was a mouthful. But I'm inspired by your journey and your story as a cancer survivor myself and patient advocate where I am. I'm really inspired by you, but I want to open the floor to everyone for questions, for comments, anyone that wants to interact, guys. This is the time now.
I'll go and wait for others to join in. Hello, everyone. I'm Parvati Krishnan. Just wonderful to meet you all. Barry, I have two questions. One is, how do you, with so many new organizations being formed every day, which is great because people are driven to give back to the community. How do you vision everyone playing nice in the sandbox, both from a regional community, national space, but also from an international space? How do organization leaders, what's the best way to get them all to play nice in the sandbox for our vision and our goal for the global community to move forward together? That's one question. And then how have you worked or have you had any experience working through reaching out to First Nation people? Because our foundation had a very hard time working with them. I come from a hereditary cancer space, pediatric, and when we reached out to the Nurses Association there, they told us this is all great, but we're doing them more harm by giving them a genetic diagnosis for their children when they don't have access to surveillance and care. And so how does that then play into all of the biomarker handouts and all of this education awareness that we are doing when quite a bit of the population will never have access for all of that to happen? So how do we break that barrier?
So, complicated question. Of course, the short answer is it depends. But it depends on where this organization and where the people are and what stage they're at and so on. The first part you said, how do we get people to play in the same sandbox? Sometimes you can't, by the way. It's a competitive world out there. It's much easier to collaborate internationally than sometimes it is when you have multiple organizations in a small area, a small country or a small city or a small territory. It is competitive, and the reason why it's competitive is all for the wrong reasons. And you could, Gail, I think there's at the top of the screen where it says meeting. If you click on that, I had the same issue as opposed to just so there's two little things to click on the top. I got that. So getting people to work together, I find the more mature the organization, the more confidence you have in yourself, it's much easier to do that and to get them to work together. When you have a plethora of information, for example, on biomarker testing and all sorts of information, it's not for everybody. I'd like to think of it as like a library. And when something is important, you go to that library and you pick out that information that's important to them. Not everybody wants to be aware of their when they go into treatment. Some people just say, well, whatever my doctor says, that's what I'm comfortable with. And you have to respect that. Some people are like that. Other people are like the people here, because you wouldn't be here if you weren't one of the A types that want to know every single thing before anybody even touched you. And that is, a certain segment of the population, not all of it. And for those people, having those resources available is very impactful. So again, it depends on, look, if you have a small organization in a third world country, then you're going to talk about comprehensive genomic profiling, you're wasting your time, right? So the question is, how could we best help you to treat your cancer in our environment, and let them know if they have the resources or if they're able to travel, or if they, what are the other opportunities for them. But a big mistake is on underestimating the capacity of people. I remember in Canada, in Quebec, when oxaliplatin was not yet approved as a drug, a chemotherapy, and patients or physicians didn't want to talk about it because it wasn't available here. Yet part of the segment of the population were already onto it and going to France to get the drug and to doing what they had to do to get, to get treated. And so information is power, but not everybody will be able to do the things that I did or that those people did. So we have to recognize on how to, do best with what we have. That said, doesn't that set the perfect background for advocacy, right? So that person who requires that drug or that treatment or whatever will either self-advocate, and it's successful, like myself, will advocate on behalf of others. And that is a skill set to be taught. Advocacy is learned over time for sure, but there are certain things that you could learn up front. So I know I didn't answer fully your question, but a little bit to, a background on competing resources and patients from different backgrounds.
Anybody else going to jump in? 'Cause I do have a question, but I also really encourage if anybody else has a question, but I will happily go. So I have a question that I think I've heard from a lot of members, and please, members who are on the call, if you've experienced this, let us know. But one challenge that we've heard particularly for members that are in under-resourced settings, is that you start to kind of become everything to everybody, right? Like everyone starts coming to you. And that's like part of, I think, what we were also asking with mission drift. But how have you either, based on, whether I've seen some organizations, right, where they start expanding outside of colorectal cancer, or there's a need in the community. It could be access to pain medication, right? It could be a very real need that's happening in the community. And I'm just curious, have you ever faced that? Because I know a lot of organizations, we kind of have to go back to our mission statement, our vision. We have to meet with our board of directors and figure out, are we going to change to meet the need of the community that's asking for the X, Y, and Z? Or are we going to have to say no? And I'm just curious, have you ever experienced that in your career? And if so, like which way did you go?
So as you know, I have a very hard time saying no to things. So I do get called in and do some other things externally. And but our mission is on those three trajectories, as I mentioned before. So we never lose sight of the colorectal side. Have I thought about gastric cancer, cholangiocarcinoma? Actually, Gail and I have worked on some of these health drug approvals and reimbursement in those areas together as well. So we do that. But I do know what you mean. So, for example, evolved in Europe, and Andy's very familiar with this from the Europa colon, came DICE, right? And the different digestive diseases. The difference is, I think that, I mean, Zorana's done an unbelievable job. She's really done, great work in the area for sure. One of the things that is different, and sometimes I think about this a lot, is, many of our organizations are started by patients like myself, Andy and so forth, his mother and so forth, who have a direct relationship, to the disease. But the next generation won't have that necessarily. I mean, it might, but likely won't, right? It'll be entirely professionally run. And that's when it comes up more, I would say, in the next iteration of the organization. Look, global cancer, colon cancer association, was a second iteration in a sense, right? Realizing that there was, apart from competing in the United States in different organizations, there was a need globally to unite organizations, spread the word around the world, and help other organizations grow. And one thing Andy said at the very beginning that I'm very flattered about, but it's so true and so important. We must look to the other organizations for best practices. We learn from those organizations. We share as I said, as the organizations get more mature, they're more willing to share. And that is a very important and strategic method of growing your organization, and collaboration, right? Being able, it's not always easy, different personalities for sure, but collaborating with the other organizations where possible helps you to grow, and helps that organization who is helping you grow. When we mentor students, for example, our master's students, they benefit, but I think we benefit just as much, when we work with them. So, yeah, sharing and collaboration.
If I may, I have a question. Like when we share and exchange materials, what is your experience, at least in like developed world? Can we share it despite the fact that you're in a different country and there might be a slightly different cultural context? Or, should we work in a way that these messages could just be the messages and not be concerned that much about like microenvironment? And with that kind of save the resources for something else?
So at the beginning, I wasn't at all sensitive to that. Of course, we have French and English in Canada as the two main languages. So we were sensitive to being a bilingual organization for sure. But there are many other ethnicities, of course, in Canada. And only in recent years, when we started to think of decentralized trials, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and so forth, the importance of that, did we start to do some work in that area. So we have worked with the East Asian population in looking at their participation, for example, in clinical trials, willingness to screen, and so forth. And this is very interesting work, challenging work. So we're learning a lot. I'm not sure how much the work is making a difference in terms of shaping the way clinical trials are done because their force is much greater than us in terms of how clinical trials are set up, and we're trying to change that as well. As you know, in the United States, EDI is no longer considered a priority, but in Canada it still is. And our targets in those type of populations are different. For example, Candace and the Blue Hat Foundation is very focused on the African American population. In Canada, yes, we're focused on the different ethnicities, but the other focus is on the Indigenous populations and First Nations. So that's some of the different priorities, and it's a learning experience, and it's not easy to address. So what we try to do, of course, is, of course, we have to do it in French and English, and the United States would do Spanish and English and so forth. Different countries have their different languages that they'll work in. And we have to adjust our cultural sensitivities as we go along in the programs by including those people, in those programs and in those decisions that are made. So not an easy question and not the best answer, but we're trying.
Thank you
Hi.
very much, Barry. It's so nice to see you, to hear you.
Yeah.
Also, I wanna, extend these congratulations to Andy on this, all this. It's amazing, for us being part of it, have our leaders to be recognized in such way is very, very inspiring for all of us. And then from there, I want to say, Barry, that congratulations also on your inspiring testimony and for such extraordinary work and achievements that you have been doing through all of these years. You're a great example of that. When you really want something, you can make it happen. And from there, I believe, even though we have been many years in FUTEGE doing our best in all of this, it's also really clear that we need to do more things. And I'm quite sure with your help and all the guidance from Nicole, Andy, Jen, everyone in the Global Colon Cancer Association, they have bring us to another level and doing more things, learning how to do things, how to professionalize our services, and also keeping the foot on the ground, and with the resources that we have, with the team that we have, improve every day. And really, really, you inspire us to do things in a better way. Also, Nicole and all the team, because you have been here around some time now, and we have to learn from the best. And I feel really fortunate that I'm working with the best.
Thank you, Francisco. I mean, that's very well said. And there's two words that I feel that are important that came up today. And the first one, I think Nicole, you said at the beginning, was hope. And the other is just do it. Just go ahead. You've got to just go out and do these types of things and make, and what you do will, even if it's a really funny thing because sometimes you don't think you're making any progress or doing anything. And then you all of a sudden hear about something that was triggered by something you said or did, and it made a difference in those other people's lives. So sometimes, you don't even realize that you are making progress when you are. And I think certainly Global Colon Cancer Association has made huge progress going back to I remember when you first started, we had some good laughs, Yola, and at that time it was really an interesting period of time. But look what you've built together as a team, and as I said, the world has changed, right? I mean, like so much. I mean, just what we're doing right now was not possible a number of years ago. When I first started, we were doing Acor listing, which was a listserv of emails. And even that was, very revolutionary. And people would respond on emails and answer you on emails. And it was sometimes moderated. Sometimes you got crazy people on there. Almost, I would say, the equivalent of a party line. Those of you might remember when you pick up the phone and you got a whole bunch of friends, different people you don't know on the phone. I guess that might be dating myself a bit, but that's the type of things we did as kids. So I could say that I started doing this not because I wanted to do this, but because I needed to do this and had to do this. At the age of 40, just turning 41 at the time, and if you would tell me that I was going to transition my law career and 31 years later, be doing this in the manner that we're doing it right now on a Zoom, speaking to people all over the world. Unbelievable, right? We wouldn't have even imagined it then. So get ready for what's coming up.
It's great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And here in Futeje, and Nicole, she know me better. And I'm a guy of sayings, and I have this one in Mexico that it's, no, it's not an option. We have to find a how-to solution. So we have to keep on going. We have to see which ways we can do our best, as I mentioned it, and to accomplish things, because it's not for a personal matter. It's for the people that we help, the people that we care about. And also because if we exist, is for our patients and the ones to come. So working, as I mentioned, with all of you guys all over the world, it's amazing. We never imagined we could get so far, and having these examples and the way to do things, it's easier for us, to learn from you. Thank you. Thank you.
And we are
Thank you.
having some opportunities we didn't have before. So, for example, some of the cancer research grand challenges that I've worked on, microbiome, for example, international collaboration. It's a very small world in terms of the microbiome. When we look at early onset collaboration and the research that we're doing around the world in this area, great collaborations in order to resolve some of these problems. In the different new treatments that are evolving right now, immunotherapies for microsatellite stable patients. Look what's coming down the pipeline right now. Greater international collaboration at every single level, at the patient level, at the researchers level, at the physician level, 100%, at the government levels, and certainly in health technology assessment and all the those bodies. We're seeing very different world where we can bring about change very rapidly. I mean, we had people come from Australia talk about different ways of doing clinical trials in Canada. Can we adapt? Can we do things differently? And we are able to change faster, right? The way that we do things too. So we're in an accelerator type of situation, and I would say that I've talked so much about all these other things that are accelerating and going fast. How are we going to change fast? This is an area that Nicole and I have been talking about a little bit in terms of artificial intelligence and so forth. I'm not quite sure yet where we're going to go. I have some ideas, and I'm actually ready to move in those areas. But how many of just here's a poll question. Curious, how many people use ChatGPT in relation to health-related questions? Nobody. One. I'm not sure. One, two, three. for? I do. As well. I don't use it to answer a specific question and that's it. I use it to research and to probe and to prompt for more questions and more areas to research into. But this is going to be a standard of care, right? It will be involved in every single thing that we do. So how are we as patient associations going to evolve with this new technology it's not when it's going to happen, it's happening, right? It's already just, not everybody's going to use it or use it in the same way. It's happening, it's not going away, and it's only going to evolve faster. So one thing I would like everybody to think about, and I see somebody has a question actually.
Yes,
So
yes.
so go ahead. But one thing to think about is how are we going to adapt to these rapidly changing technologies? Dozy, if I pronounce it right? No question.
Dozy?
Yeah,
Oh, there.
thank you so much, Barry, for this wonderful presentation. And sincerely, you have captured a whole lot of things. And this last part you talked about really tells more about organizations like Global Colon Cancer bringing people together to learn easily, without much stress. It's just the time you're going to put in. So I really appreciate everyone for this. So by the way, my name is Dozie Akwarando, Nest of Hope, Nigeria. I want to ask a question on something you have talked about, and someone has talked about it too. But looking beyond collaborations, I want to probe about coalition. A lot of us with lived experience didn't really know much about organizations before we started. And it's quite, I would say, is really good what the lived experience are doing. It represents also what we are preaching about patient-centered care, because those voices are bringing reality into the system. But in the part of collaboration, Barry, what do you think? How do you think organizations should manage their differences to come together to perhaps advocate for the needs of the lived experience, or to advocate for things that will improve the cancer health care across board, largely for people in the same region. Like, for instance, in Nigeria, there are a lot of people advocating, but the system likes the lone voices, because you're asking for something, another person is asking for something. So they are comfortable that because they don't want to answer anybody, so they are not answering at all. So what do you think? How do you think organizations should do, or to come together to ask for specific needs?
So, first of all, love your logo, the hope, and I think that really says a lot. It's not an easy question that you're asking, and certainly would be different in Nigeria than it would be in other areas of the world for sure. But there are certain commonalities. One is, what do you want to achieve? Like, what is the goal of your organization or your specific, targeted goal of the organization that you want to achieve? So, for example, for a while, and for us in Canada, it was bringing in population-based screening programs. And what I did was I got in a coalition, people who were of a like mind in terms of screening within what was called the Canadian Partnership Against Cancer. But guess what? When that was being formed, they didn't think that colorectal cancer screening was important, or screening was important, and it was not a priority. So I did a little bit of advocacy with the federal minister of health. I don't even know how I did this, but he convinced him, got lucky, I guess, right time, right day. And he thought it was a great idea that screening should be a priority of what was to become the Canadian Partnership Against Cancer. Then, even within this coalition, if you will, or this partnership, it wasn't their priority. So it was kind of like coming in from the outside. But then when they had to demonstrate that they did something, actually accomplished something to get their budget for the following year, I said, well, wouldn't it be great if everybody decided, or at least took the first steps to start screening programs in all of their provinces? And I got the different provinces together, and they decided, yes, it would be a good idea. And one by one, they demonstrated this accomplishment as part of what became known as the Colorectal Cancer Screening Network. So they showed they did something and they got funded. So what I'm saying is start with a target you want to get done, a goal. So in our case, it was a screening program. Who can you collaborate in a coalition, work together best with, and learn how to advocate together? And, I don't want to sound like I know everything. You need a lot of luck and good timing. But, you got to, if you don't take those first steps, nothing happens. And we have another poll. And I answered it. So hopefully everybody else does.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the interaction. Today, we've been reminded that lived experience is not just a story, it's leadership, it's insight, it's a call to do better. And I think the question for all of us is not whether we value patient voices, but how intentionally we include them in the work that we do and in our decision making and strategies. So our next month's speaker is Dr. Helen Winter, who is an honorary professor, associate professor with University of Bristol and the director for SWAG Cancer Alliance. Join us next month and let's hear what she has for us. I think we have come to an end. To the end of our meeting. It went way beyond, but it was exciting because we had such an exciting conversation with Barry. I'd like to leave us with a quote, Jen. I think that this year, don't just make a resolution, but build a system that helps you keep it. Thank you, and we've come to the end of our meeting. It's 2:09 for me, a.m.
Before we all go, I want us to just wish Nicole a very, very happy birthday. Thank you for joining us on your birthday, Nicole.
Thanks, guys. Go to bed, Tumi. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Barry.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Barry.
Bye.
It was lovely.